Geometry Dash is a hard game. A hard game with a long history of players overcoming impossible challenges, never giving up through mind blocks, skill issues, or bad luck on their quest for that one shining attempt where everything goes right. In a game as difficult as Geometry Dash, it's of course impossible to succeed without first failing, and every player who's ever accomplished anything has failed a lot over their career. But of course, not every fail is created equal. Most fails happen in the first few clicks of a run. Some are progress deaths that, if anything, show the player is improving at a level. Some, of course, are a little frustrating, but the player will ultimately complete the level and move on with life. And it will never really matter that they died at 99% on Zodiac. But what about the fails that don't get forgotten? What about the fails that are so bad that they permanently affect the legacy of the level? What about the fails that are so bad that the player involved never plays the game again? What about the fails that are so bad that they change the course of the entire game's history? Well, if anything like that had ever happened, those would be the worst Geometry Dash fails of all time. Before we talk about the fails that require context, or a full-on history lesson, I'd like to give an honorable mention to the current statistically worst fail in the game, Cuatrocientos's 99% fail on the current second hardest level in the game, Flame Wall. Well, his first 99% fail on Flame Wall. In case you've been living under a rock, Flame Wall was an extremely hyped 7-minute long Ultra collab that got finished in 2023 and was given to the player 1 Alpha Helix to verify. The level was extremely hyped as a top 1, due to its length, huge roster of creators, and its unique song. But between the pressure to verify and the physics changes brought on by 2.2, Helix dropped the level after 4 months of attempts. The level was given to the relatively unknown player, Cuatrocientos, to verify instead. Quattro's hardest at the time was only Belladonna, so it was an extremely uphill battle for him as he played the prospective top 1 for months, slowly building consistency and posting bigger and bigger runs, including a huge progress fluke from 3 to 86 in September 2024. The level went dormant for the first half of 2025, without much big progress happening, but finally, as he approached 200,000 attempts, he started making moves again. 68, 76, 24 to 100, and just as it looked like he was finally going to have a chance to verify the level, something terrible happened. The very last gap, in the very last percent, of what might have been the hardest level in the game. The community was stunned, but this fail was so outrageous that it escaped containment and got some attention outside the Geometry Dash community. Self-described as the leading source for influencer, streamer, gaming, and viral content, the website Dexerto posted about Quattro's fail, calling it the worst fail in the game's history. Fortunately, Quattro never gave up and returned to streaming the next day. After another 99% fail a week later, he eventually pulled through and verified the level in September 2025, 3 weeks after his first 99% run. This was undoubtedly one of the most impressive showcases of dedication in Geometry Dash history, taking 221,000 attempts across 220 streams, which took place over a year and a half of consistent grinding. Despite his fails and doubters, he ultimately pulled through, and while Flame Wall hasn't seen any time as the top 1 as of the writing of this video, it's safe to say it still succeeds as the game's ultimate test of consistency and nerve control. But since he ultimately succeeded, was the fail even that bad? His first fail in 99 only delayed the verification about 3 weeks, and since the level focuses so much on consistency, he kept getting huge runs after his fails, so it never seemed like they discouraged him or had any chance of preventing his verification. In fact, I'd argue the fails motivated him. He streamed every single day between his first 99% fail and the verifications. The fails might have even been good for Quattro. They gave him a ton of exposure, and he's accumulated 400,000 views between his 2 fail videos. Ultimately, despite being the furthest fail on the second hardest level in the game, it's impossible to say any of this really matters in the grand scope of the game's history. Quattro kept playing, the level didn't change or get delayed in a way that affected its demon list placement, and Zoink just became the first victor a little later than he would have anyway. You know what would have made Quattro's fail way worse? What if Quattro had died on the hardest level in the game? If you're aware of Flame Wall, you're almost certainly familiar with Bloodbath. Bloodbath is probably the single most important Geometry Dash level of all time, marking the end of the 1.9 era and opening the game to a whole new world of difficulty. The level was built by some of the game's best players and most well-known creators, and was verified by inarguably the best player of the time over an entire summer in 25,000 attempts, which was a staggering attempt count at the time. The community had been excited to try the new hardest level in the game after watching Riot and Michigan's preview and teaser videos, as well as the verification streams, and progress started soon after the level was uploaded. In only a few days, Smokes got 25%, then 27%, then 34%, being the first player to pass Michigan's infamous part from the start of the level. Unfortunately, he was on 60 Hz, and if you know anything about old Geometry Dash, you'll know this was a huge disadvantage before 2.2, especially in ship parts. Smokes would ultimately drop the level to focus on building instead. He was grinding against Sandstorm, who was arguably the third best player of the time behind Riot and Cyclic, but unfortunately, I can't tell you Sandstorm's exact progress, because it's been lost to the sands of time, and shitty Chinese fighting games. Anyway, progress on the level staled a bit until a player named Mabby01 started posting big progress, getting all the way to the 60s in January 2016, and reaching Etzer's part with a disappointing 71% death in February that year. But ultimately, Mabby would also drop the level after this death. Right around Mabby's biggest record, 2 highly skilled 144 Hz players who had recently beaten Cataclysm started playing Bloodbath: Serve and Quasar. Quasar was regarded as the single best straight flyer in the game, and this helped him start strong, getting 52 to 100% in February 2016 after a week of playing, then reaching 39% just 10 days later, pushing his records to 50 and 61 before getting the flu and being forced to take a break. Despite Quasar's fast progress, Serve was potentially an even better player. After beating Cataclysm in a single 12-hour session, in what I'm sure was the first single session Extreme Demon completion ever, Serve set his sights on Bloodbath and started grinding away, chasing Mabby and Quasar. His records, like Sandstorm's, are not very well documented, but he was loud, confident, and quickly caught up. Quasar got back in good health, and the quest to beat Bloodbath officially became a race. On March 6th, 2016, it wouldn't be Quasar, but actually Serve, who passed 71, getting the world record, and as his run continued, passing Etzer, Havoc, and Gyron David, it started to look like Serve would be the first one to survive the Bloodbath. Serve would continue playing and streaming, but Quasar was in hot pursuit, getting 77% just 3 days later. And, unfortunately for Serve, later that week, Quasar would complete Bloodbath, winning the race and becoming the first victor of the hardest level in the game.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! It's over! It's over! Get wrecked, Serve! Get freaking Serve! He beat it! It's over!
This would catapult Quasar into top player status, cement him in the history books, and even net him an offer to verify the remade, buffed, and extended sequel Bloodlust. Serve would still move on to beat Bloodbath 2 weeks later.
Yes! Yes!
And he ultimately became a popular top player with a far higher peak in skill than Quasar ever reached, but his death at 96 took away the potential crowning achievement of his entire career, a chance to win the most important race in GD history and to be the first victor of the most iconic level of all time. One of the good things about very old fails, though, is that they happened in much shorter time frames than modern ones. Serv's blood had been spilt in the bloodbath, and he spent some time mauling over Quasar's trash talk because of it. I'm sure it wasn't fun to grind for second victor either after losing the race, but it's hard to say Serv's career has been defined by this fail. The players after this are not that lucky. Like Bloodbath, there was absolutely no doubt where Bloodlust was going to place on the demon list. Announced while its predecessor Bloodbath was still top 1, Bloodlust aimed to push the game into an entirely new frontier of difficulty, alongside other ambitious projects like Yatagarasu and Sonic Wave. In fact, it might have aimed to outdo them. The early history of Bloodlust is very interesting, but a little outside the scope of this video. If you'd like to learn more, I think the C1997 Maps from Hell video has aged pretty well, so I'll provide the link for that somewhere in the description or the notes on this. Anyway, the level was finished and handed to the first victor of Bloodbath, Quasar. Quasar played the level on and off through the summer of 2016, but ultimately quit Geometry Dash due to hand pain and pressure from school, so the level had to be given to someone else. Serv was already busy because he'd been appointed to verify Yatagarasu, so the level was given to Nobbleeboy. This was a bit odd because, while he was a very strong player and an early Bloodbath victor, Nob was not one of the very best players in the game. Regardless, he made quick progress at first, learning the extension in about a week. But the upload slowed as Bloodlust became second priority and he worked on other things, like collab parts, beating the top demon of Thanatos, verifying artificial ideology, and creating God Eater. He progressed slowly because of these other projects, uploading new progress videos every couple weeks as he played in the background. And after nearly a year of playing Bloodlust as a second priority, he finally reached the extension from 0 in March 2017. After working through some drama related to God Eater, he finally made what looked like a push for the end. He got 18 to 85, and at around the 100,000 attempt mark, he got 76. His YouTube description said he had been consistent all week, and it seemed likely that he would finally triumph over Bloodlust, nearly a year after he had started playing the level.
Dude, what the fuck? Really? Oh, the fuck no.
At the time, this was by far the worst fail in the entire game. The previous worst fail in the game was definitely Serv's 96 on Bloodbath, which may have even been the reason for Quasar beating the level first, but I believe this is the first time someone truly declared a death to be the worst fail in GD history. And he was right. Nobbleeboy continued playing the level on and off over the next several months, but his bad luck continued. He got 97, then 97 again, then tweeted about getting 91 multiple times at the start of 2018. What made this unlucky period even more demotivating were the actions of Sunix and the infamous pedophile Krazen. These players started playing Bloodlust 2, saying that Nobbleeboy was taking too long to verify the level. This must have given Nob the burst of motivation he needed, though, because a few weeks after the drama with Krazen was resolved, he was finally able to close out the level, 8 months after his fail at 98.
Yes! Yes!
Bloodlust did ultimately place it number 1 on the demon list, but it wasn't the ultimate push for difficulty the community had been promised. When Bloodlust was first given to Nob, it was significantly, comedically harder than the top demons of the time. Bloodbath, Athanatos, and even the unrated top 1 Wokropolix were nowhere close to Bloodlust in difficulty. When Nob got 98, the top 3 had grown up quite a bit into the RGB, but Bloodlust would have still been firmly the hardest level in the game over Sonic Wave and Yatagarasu. Unfortunately, the additional 8 months of verification time meant that new levels could be released, and when Scullo became the first person to beat Bloodlust, he actually called it the second hardest level in the game, after Plasma Pulse Finale. There was a huge flurry of drama surrounding the placement of the top 2, and it took a few weeks for Bloodlust's top 1 status to feel anything but shaky. With some retrospective that might seem silly, because Bloodlust is commonly considered to be a bit harder than Plasma Pulse Finale today, but at the time some of the best players in the game said the opposite. The release of levels like Gamma and Death Corridor Z also meant that despite being the hardest level in the game, Bloodlust wasn't on a new plane of difficulty. It ultimately was just the next small step. I see this as a far worse fail than Cuatrocientos' 99% on Flame Wall or Serve's death at 96% on Bloodbath. Even though the Flame Wall fail happened a bit further on an incomprehensibly more difficult level, Nobleboy and Bloodlust were affected far more than Quattro and Flame Wall, and the same goes for Serve. If Nob hadn't died to 98, the drama with Krazen wouldn't have happened, Sunix wouldn't have had thousands of attempts of pre-practice on the level, and the Plasma Pulse Finale difficulty discussion would have been dead on arrival. The level was also already top 1 for 13 months when it was verified. If it had been top 1 for 8 additional months, it would have been by far the longest standing top 1 of all time, outlasting Tidal Wave and Tartarus in their reigns of terror. I think being overdramatic is a good way to script a YouTube video, but to be honest, these hits against Bloodlust's all-time legacy are pretty minor. I don't think it's an uncommon opinion that Bloodlust ended up feeling the most correct level as a top 1 of all time, even if that status was a little debated at first. Nobleboy was inconvenienced too, but ultimately he went on to continue a long, successful career as a top creator. Wouldn't it have been a shame if one of the other people playing the level had stuck with it? If Tartarus is anything, it's hard. Allegedly, Tartarus was started before Bloodbath, under the name Silent Akbar, as a competitor level to the impossible Ice Carbon Diablo X. The level halfway lived up to its name, but ultimately the project was too ambitious, and progress stalled for a few years while the community caught up to it. In 2017, the project was revived, under the name Tartarus. Throughout the year, the level was reborn into a contemporary, well-decorated, polished product. The rough and ridiculously unbalanced original layout had been replaced with something far more palatable, and the decoration got significant upgrades, having a few standout quality parts between the authentic 1.9 stuff that was good enough to keep. Unlike most Extreme Demons, though, Tartarus was not released at the end of a long publicity cycle full of previews, verification streams, and showcases. Instead, Riot dumped the level onto the servers in January 2018 out of nowhere, uploading a short video to explain that this wouldn't have one set verifier.
We're going to hold a contest for it, basically, so I'm challenging the whole community right here and now to go try to verify the level, so the level will be uploaded onto my account as soon as this video is live. Everyone can download it and play it for themselves, and basically it's a race to see who can verify the level first.
And as soon as the community heard the news, nothing happened. The level was far beyond the skill level of any player in the community. The top 1 was Plasma Pulse Finale, which, with some retrospective, is barely even like playing the same game as something like Tartarus. The level lied dormant for months, with no substantial progress from anybody, and it had started seeming like nobody wanted to beat the level. Or maybe it was just that nobody could. Players like Skullo, Sunix, Diamond Splash, and even the hacker end level didn't have the strength to take on Tartarus. Enter Mulzy. A year after Tartarus released, in January 2019, Mulzy started uploading his progress on the level. His first upload was a 32% run, which was already one of the biggest runs on Tartarus ever. He got 2 world record runs next, achieving 52 to 100 and 40 in quick succession. Before January ended, he would have 41 to 100
Yes!
and 45, stitching the level together into 2 runs centered around the impossible straight fly in the middle. His next runs showed he could handle that straight fly too, getting 22 to 84 and multiple attempts to the 60s in February. His mental game was like nothing ever seen before in the game. Where others would post paragraphs full of negativity and doubt, Mulzy's progress videos came with short descriptions affirming his skills and commitment. It seems that everything is finally starting to fall into place. I will beat this. Soon. Still going strong. Every day I just keep getting more and more consistent. It's only a matter of time now. And at the end of March, despite a soul-crushing death at 91, it took me a bit to realize that this death was actually good, and I'm just one step closer to the ending goal. It's within touching distance now, guys. I just need to keep on playing. Molesy took a short break from the level, but when summer came, he was back on the grind. He got enormous runs from 35 to 100 and 21 to 100 back to back, showing no loss of consistency during his time off from the level. In fact, he seemed more prepared than ever. He had studied techniques Olympic athletes used to get into the proper headspace for competition, and he hoped that this mentality buff would finally carry him to the end of his journey.
No! No! No!
Molesy kept playing Tartarus, but his impenetrable consistency and mental strength wavered. He started playing more other levels on the side, and his uploads slowed as Tartarus hung over his head. Most notable of these break levels, in my opinion, is actually one of the easier ones, Tech Manifestation. Molesy took a break from Tartarus to beat Tech Manifestation, an easy extreme verified by the Russian player Dolphy. And, ironically, while Molesy was playing Tech Manifestation and other filler levels, Dolphy was playing Tartarus. Dolphy had already started playing Tartarus and gotten 55 while Molesy was getting his enormous runs to 100, but Dolphy also took a break from the level to play other things. When he came back though, he quickly got back up to speed and got 78, 91, and matched Molesy's biggest run to 100 with 23 to 100, all within a week. Dolphy was getting the hardest runs in the game's entire history back to back to back, and it became obvious that he was simply unstoppable. A few weeks later, he got 98, which by percentage and difficulty was the worst fail in the entire game at that time. And ultimately, the inevitable happened. We said goodbye to 2019, gave an optimistic, unknowing welcome to 2020, and on January 6th, Dolphy officially verified Tartarus.
Да, я прошел! Я прошел! Я прошел Tartarus!
10 days later, Molesy became the first victor, after over 200,000 attempts.
Oh my god! 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 Oh my god!
The level was immediately rated and placed at number 1 on the demon list, signaling the arrival of a new breed of extreme demons, and players good enough to beat them. Tartarus would be the top one for 17 months over the next 2 years, only rivaled by the Golden and Sonic Wave Infinity. It was everything Riot could have possibly wanted. And it was probably hack verified. Molesy's 97% on Tartarus not only delayed the level's verification for 6 months, it opened the door for Dolphy to hack verify the level. It's never truly, conclusively been confirmed exactly whether or not Dolphy hacked or how he did it, but from the moment Dolphy uploaded his video, the community has been adamant that his completion was not legit. His progress was too fast, and he refused to provide raw footage to prove to the demon list that his record was legit. But it didn't matter. Community members rushed to post exposal videos. But it didn't matter. The level wasn't even rated until Molesy beat the level legit, signaling that the mod team or perhaps even RobTop himself didn't believe Dolphy. But even that didn't matter. Dolphy won the verification race, and by Molesy's own request, the official version of Tartarus was rated on Dolphy's account, because he was the verifier. And unfortunately, since then, Molesy hasn't been much of anything. I mentioned earlier that Tartarus lasted a long time as the top one. In fact, Tartarus spent more time as the hardest level in the game than anything else ever has. The Golden was above for a couple months, and Sonic Wave Infinity was never far behind those two, but by and large, Tartarus was completely unchallenged until the release of Firework at the end of 2021. To challenge Tartarus, a level had to be basically impossible, and most of the game's top players weren't actively trying to be the one to replace it. It would have to be someone relatively unknown, showcasing extreme dedication and playing something extremely difficult and out of their skill range if anyone was going to have any chance of replacing Tartarus. Abyss of Darkness was a layout collab between Exen and a group of other amateur creators from Eastern Europe. It was aimed to be the top CIS demon, the hardest level in the game built by people from these countries. The level went through some drama, but ultimately it was fully decorated and verified by Exen in October 2018. The verification was obviously hacked, with Exen not even providing clicks in his completion to try to pass it off as legit, so the level never achieved a rate or any real attention, and the community quickly forgot about Abyss of Darkness. Except for one player. Dills Thick, an early Zodiac victor, remembered AOD in the summer of 2020, right after Tartarus had been released. He made quick progress, getting 43 to 76 in July, and slowly increasing his runs over the next few weeks. By the end of summer, he had 43% and 43 to 100, and it started to become obvious that after getting so much progress in such a short time, he would have a real shot at verifying the level. His progress slowed at the end of 2020, but he extended his best runs to 32 to 100 and 68% before the end of the year, stunning the community with his quiet progress. 2021 started, and there were still no challengers for Tartarus, except for Dills Thick. Dills quickly got 76 and then made a progress fluke to 95 a few months later. This progress was so insane that Exen dubbed Dills the official verifier of the level, quietly admitting that he had hacked the original verification. The progress continued into April, where Dills extended his best run to a ridiculous 18 to 100, showing he had the consistency and confidence to clear up the level, and one commenter said what everyone else was thinking at the time. Can't wait for every other upcoming top 1 to be an upcoming top 2. Despite the level's incomparable difficulty, its insane choke points, and its unforgiving balancing, Dills Thick pushed through, and in July 2021, over a year after he'd started playing the level, Dills Thick was finally on a run with a chance to make history. After 200,000 attempts, Dills failed at 98%, on the hardest level in the game, with only a single click left. This fail was heartbreaking, but Dills didn't give up and kept playing the level, and a month later, Dills finally got another run deep into the second half of the level, with another opportunity to finally put AOD to rest. And Dills Thick, again, clicked one frame late, tying himself for the furthest fail on the hardest level in the game. Getting the worst fail in the game twice in the same month is a level of consistency that makes it seem inevitable that Dills Thick would eventually pull through and verify the level. But a few weeks later, Dills shocked the community by announcing that he would officially be dropping AOD in an effort to spend more time on his real life. With his resignation, this original version of AOD died, and it was replaced completely by a version Exen and CD Music had built to ensure AOD would be rate-worthy. Ultimately, these fails delayed the level's release significantly. It would take an entire year for the level to be verified at the end of a race between Cursed and Trick, where it placed top 1 over Firework, Sakupan Circles, and Slaughterhouse, the newest wave of top demons that had dethroned Tartarus at the end of 2021. Dills Thick's fails had more effects than almost any other in the game. His fails meant that the far less interesting version of the level, in my opinion, was verified and rated, and instead of being the hardest level in the game for over a year, it would trade places with Slaughterhouse for a few months until Acheron came along to crush them both. It should go without saying, of course, that Dills also lost the opportunity to verify a top 1, and thus didn't get the recognition that comes with that achievement. This would also, to my knowledge, be the first time a Russian player beat the hardest demon in the game, but Dills gave up before that could happen. Dills was also a fairly unique player, playing on CRT instead of a gaming monitor like every other top player uses. CRTs display images sooner than LCD monitors, and thus have significantly less input delay, at the cost of displaying a lower FPS. I believe that if Dills Thick pulled through with AOD when it was so ahead of its time, we might have seen more top players try out using CRTs, which would have been an exciting shift in the meta of top play. But if Dills Thick's fails were on by far the hardest level in the game, and they changed the legacy of the level he was playing, significantly reduced his success as a player, and maybe even had implications on the way the wider community played the game, why is 98% on Abyss of Darkness not considered the worst fail of all time? If you know anything at all about Geometry Dash, there's a good chance you know what this level is. This is Sonic Wave. I'm not going to go through the entire history of Sonic Wave for the purpose of this video, because, like Bloodlust, there's a lot of history to go through, and there's already a video that does that better than I ever could. But to give a short recap, the level was very, very hard when it was released. The level was originally uploaded 3 weeks before Bloodbath, but it was so much harder than every other level at the time, including Bloodbath, that it was obvious it had been hacked. This ultimately led to the player Cyclic admitting to hacking the level, and Sonic Wave was unrated. Bloodbath was of course verified and rated soon after this, and the community's best players started racing to see who could beat the new hardest level in the game first. Players like Smokes, Mabby, Serve, and Quasar began grinding the level for the next few months, and Sonic Wave stayed looming in the background. But not every player started grinding Bloodbath. Riot had already beaten Bloodbath, of course, so he moved on to attempt Sonic Wave, and he was joined by a few others, most notably an unknown player known as Mafiwi. Mafiwi's progress, despite not having any notable completions before picking up Sonic Wave, was fast. In October 2015, he posted 24% as his first progress, but quickly pushed forward to get 64 to 100, 36, and 49%. His progress was so fast, in fact, that he felt comfortable adding a few buffs to the level, most notably in the last wave. His progress slowed, but moving into the end of the year, he got a new record of 72%, and it became obvious that despite its extreme difficulty, Sonic Wave could be beaten, and it wouldn't even necessarily be Riot to do it. Mafiwi had spent 6 months consistently playing the level as a jump from Decode, and tens of thousands of attempts had been spent trying to get one perfect, historic, game-defining run. And in March 2016, shortly after Bloodbath had finally been beaten for the first time, it looked like it was Mafiwi's turn to make history.
No! 98!
98! 98!
No!
It was common at the time to view Bloodbath and Sonic Wave as contemporaries, enemies, or maybe even antagonists to one each other. The symbolism is all there: the blue versus the red, the wave versus the ship, the Korean community versus the English-speaking, Cyclic versus Riot. But despite how awesome this storyline is, the truth is that these levels are nowhere near comparable. There have been thousands of players in the last 10 years who beat Bloodbath, who will never, ever have the skill to beat Sonic Wave. Even Riot, inarguably the best player at the time, wouldn't beat the level until years later in what I would consider the modern day. Even Sonix, the rising star who would eventually become the best player in the game, wouldn't beat the level until 8 months after Mafiwi's 98% fail, when it was still considered the biggest jump in top 1 difficulty of all time, despite Athanatos, Sakupan Hell, and Wakropolix all coming out between Mafiwi's fail and Sonix's verification. And remember when I said that Mafiwi felt so confident that he ended up buffing the level? It's worth mentioning that these buffs weren't necessarily trivial. Some of the buffs were minor, but could easily lower the consistency of already inconsistent parts. Many of them also increased the CPS to a level that was pretty uncommon at the time. The buffs to the last wave, though, dramatically increased the difficulty of a few key moments, including the last spam. This means that if Mafiwi verified his own copy of Sonic Wave, the gap in difficulty between Sonic Wave and every other level would be even more colossal than it was when Sonix verified it. The effects on Mafiwi's career make this fail even more crushing. Mafiwi would continue playing the level on and off, even playing the level on the group account Quirr, where he'd reached the ending a few times with fails at 81 and 90. But it didn't matter. Mafiwi would never get another chance at the final spam, and eventually he gave up, deleted his Twitch, deleted his YouTube, and sold his GD account. Before selling his Geometry Dash account, he hosted one final Reddit AMA, and in response to a question about coming back to the game, he promised to never, ever return. What could have happened if Mafiwi never failed the final spam? His Reddit AMA suggests he was dissatisfied with the state of the game and top demons. Would he have used his skills and influence to create new, better projects? Or would he have just quit after verifying Sonic Wave? Would he continue to grind the list? Would Wave have become the game's dominant skill set instead of Ship during 2.0? Would anyone else be motivated to beat Sonic Wave before Sonic's? You could spend hours running down little trails of connected events and tying red strings from completion to completion, imagining the after effects of Mafiwi's verification. Sonic Wave was already one of the most influential levels and completions of all time. It seems almost impossible to imagine that the level being verified 8 months earlier, in a harder state, by a different player, would have anything but enormous ramifications for the current state of the game. But unfortunately, we'll never really know, because Mafiwi didn't get a verification on Sonic Wave in 2016. He got the worst fail in Geometry Dash history.